Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Good afternoon, Dan Rubenstein. I feel like I just talked to you. Did I not?
We did just speak, yes. And it was a joy, despite some of the opinions we had to espouse about the Penn State Northwestern game and the Oregon Indiana game. But I had to blast.
Well, on the heels of that and on the heels of Penn State's third straight loss, remember they lost to your Oregon Ducks. Then they lost a stunner on the road to UCLA. They came back home. They lost 22-21 to Northwestern. Obviously, we talked about it. The college football world is talking about what does Penn State do next. As I said, did not seem as if it was a tenable situation. It was a matter of when, not if. I was trying to put people on alert, though I myself did not know when this move was going to go down. Shortly, a bit ago, I should say.
Yeah, you didn't think it was going to happen today.
Did not think it was going to happen. I just got done telling you I didn't think it was going to happen this quickly. No sooner I said that, sure enough, Pat Kraft makes it official. They are going to pay the exorbitant buyout, around $50 million, something in that neighborhood, to get rid of James Franklin. He is now gone. Effective immediately, Terry Smith, the cornerbacks coach, is going to be the interim for Penn State. This obviously is going to kick off a fairly high-profile search, though there are a couple other openings out there. This clearly is the highest profile, at least at time of recording. So
yes,
on today's mini stream, emergy pod, whatever we want to call this, perhaps we can reflect a little bit on what this means, what got us to this point, some of the names that have emerged in the early going here. Obviously, we're only about to be in week 8, so there is a long way to go before I think we have some clarity on where this thing is going to head next, Dan Rubenstein. But I was surprised, to say the least, that it went down.
Take off your host hat. Take off your host hat. Give me Penn State tie. Unpack everything. Unpack your emotions. Unpack your thoughts. Unpack the James Franklin era without any of the benefit of being able to sit with it for any amount of time. Although I imagine Penn State people have begun sitting with it, a few weeks ago when things seem to be rolling in the wrong direction. How do you unpack this from your spleen, from your gallbladder? What do you feel?
I think Franklin deserves a lot of credit for stepping in when he did. It is easy now to look at what has gone on over the last couple weeks and say that he was falling short of expectations, but it's harder to take the longer view and look at what he's done over the last 12 years. And this was a program that was in a much, much different place when he took over initially 12 years ago. So he has done an immaculate job just on that level, building the program up, getting it to the point where now we're talking about Penn State as a playoff team, where the expectation is a playoff team, a national championship contender, a conference contender.
Yes.
That is not easy to do. So I give him a lot of credit for that, and I think he deserves respect for what he did build at Penn State. Surely whoever comes in next is going to be standing on his shoulders, right? And what he's built. Clearly, they're going to be rebooting on some level. They're going to lose recruits. They've already started losing recruits. I talked about that last night. But
right, there was a big 2027 receiver who I think and was relatively local, who was one of the top 10, 12 receivers in that class who decommitted recently. That was a big one. Continue.
Yeah, and a running back who has since wavered, also from PA. Come on, spell. So look, it's going to go through the normal cycle now, the normal ebb and flow of nobody knowing who the new name is going to be, nobody wanting to sign on for anything because they don't know what they're getting themselves into. That we just know that this is like the new world order, especially in the era of NIL and transfer portal and whatnot. So
yes,
I think James Franklin definitely deserves a lot of credit for what he built at Penn State, but there is no denying the fact that what we saw, and even though they went pretty far last year, there is no denying that what we've seen over the last couple years has left fans wanting.
Right.
And there was definitely a conversation about offense. Remember, they go out to get Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas. That was a big hire. It never quite felt like, even with Kotelnicki coming in with the track record that he had, it never quite felt like we got the full pyrotechnic display that we had hoped.
Right.
The common denominator was James Franklin. The receiver position continually felt like it was coming up well short of expectations for a team that's supposed to be a playoff contender, supposed to be a conference contender. There was an issue there.
Let's be clear. Not supposed to be. Was in the top 4, I don't know, 10 months ago? Was in the college football playoff semifinal without big-time contributions. Now, I'm not saying the receivers weren't big-time because some of them have gone on to some success, but despite that receiver room and its production, they were able to utilize defense and running and I mean, look, the path wasn't the hardest to the college football playoff semifinal, but you can only beat who's in front of you. And it seemed like Penn State, and this is what from the outside, Penn State fans have been clamoring for. It's not that they need to win national championships or play for national championships every season, but there was this perceived ceiling that you're like, what is the growth looking like, right? Where is the win against a national title caliber Michigan or Ohio State or Oregon or, in this year's case, Indiana is looking like one of the nationally elite within the Big Ten. Where do we go from, yes, we're 10-2. Yes, that's great. Yes, he is hitting the sort of zone of where Penn Staters feel like they should be, but it's, the improv rule. Yes, and yes, we are good enough to get to here. Yes, we are good enough to hire these assistants who have gone on to success elsewhere. Yes, Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons, Saquon Barkley, Hans Gesicki, who we mentioned briefly last night, right? That there's these folk hero type players that James Franklin and his staff were able to bring in and develop. The best of Joe Moorhead and the 2016 season, 10 years ago, was when they last won the Big Ten with that incredible comeback against Wisconsin. Talk to me about the growth, which I think is a totally fair question from Penn State people, right?
Absolutely. And especially with some of the moves they have since made. Okay. And this is where it starts to get, I think, a little bit murky. We can talk specifics about aspects of the team that the fan base felt should be better, that the fan base was hoping would get to a next gear. That was never really a question on defense. It was almost always centered around what they could do on offense. Drew Aller was sort of like the prince that was promised, who was going to step in, the 5-star quarterback. He was James Franklin's guy, right? There were all of these things that pointed to this season being the season. And then on top of it, they go out and they hire Jim Knowles to come in and replace Tom Allen on the defensive side of the football. There was just a lot of steam on what this season could be. But to your point, I think, and I mentioned this time and again, though everybody, and myself included, had Penn State penciled in as a playoff team and potentially a semifinal team, a national championship team, I guess it depends who you talk to. This season began with the expectations that given the roster, they would beat one of two teams. They would beat Oregon at home in that whiteout, or they would beat Ohio State on the road in Columbus, which is, I think, a foregone conclusion at this point. That's probably not going to happen. But it was one of those two games. One of those two games would have been very symbolic in proving that Penn State, that James Franklin was able to get over the proverbial hump.
Right.
They did not do it against Oregon. And there was an open question about how is Penn State going to respond now? I think the answer to that question is complicated. Penn State, probably not as good as we thought.
Right.
But still played a really good team in Oregon. Still came back into that game despite being down 17-3 late. Got into OT, was a play or two away maybe from a different outcome. That clearly socked the wind out of Penn State. They go to UCLA, they lose. They come back home, they lose. It was almost as if they had the same idea for what this season could have been. In that, you need to beat Oregon. If you don't beat Oregon, with everything stacked in your favor, with having an incredible crowd, you and I were there at the whiteout.
Off a bye week.
If you cannot get over the hump, then when?
Look, a lot of teams lose a big game off a bye week at home against a high-quality Big Ten team, Ty. A lot of
this is not an Oregon
programs. Ty, it's always, you got to go a little bit beneath the surface. The subtext is always Oregon. Continue.
So if not now, when?
Yeah.
That is where I think we came down as Penn Staters, given recent experience here with this team.
Yeah.
And, I feel bad that it went down this way for Franklin. I as I said before, I came to really like the guy.
Yeah.
I think what he built at Penn State is worthy of a lot of respect.
Yep.
And I am sad that it kind of went down in the manner that it did. I also kind of give Pat Kraft a lot of credit, the AD, because we often see it in college football where, there's a situation and it's tenuous and everybody sort of knows that the writing's on the wall and we know how the story is going to end, but it gets dragged out.
Yeah.
Now, there was a huge buyout involved here that was given to James Franklin long before Pat Kraft got there. Not long before, but it wasn't Pat Kraft's
It was
doing.
not his business.
It was
decision.
not his doing, right? So this is not on Pat Kraft that there's a $50 million buyout to contend with. But alas, Pat Kraft saw the writing on the wall. The old Jeremy Foley quote when he was at Florida is something that rings true this time of year now more than ever.
Which was it attributed correctly? I don't even remember at this point. I remember there's like a folk hero.
He at least said it.
Yeah.
He at least said it
Yeah.
as part of a presser at some point.
What should be
Whatever is
done
going to be done
eventually,
eventually should be done immediately.
Yeah.
And so I give Pat Kraft the credit at least for understanding the circumstances here and for deciding that he is going to rip the Band-Aid off come hell or high water. They're going to pay the money. They're going to get out of this. They're going to move on.
Look, I mean, from the outside, you can correct me, but this is not unique to Penn State in that with the kind of disappointing loss that unfolded yesterday at home against a Northwestern team that has struggled mightily this year, though they did beat the mighty UCLA Bruins, it should be noted. Penn State lost to a team with a win over UCLA. That's tongue-in-cheek, Ty. That Penn State money behind the scenes, take your pick, right? Those are the people that need to be appeased, like in any program.
Sure.
And so firing James Franklin today is a signal to those that what has transpired this year, given expectations, given the money spent on the roster, and obviously Jim Knowles to come in and with the hopes of taking this defense to a national title caliber level, because he just did that with Ohio State. The signal is that this is not acceptable, and we are being proactive about finding someone who is acceptable, and we don't want to turn off the money spigot. Right.
Well,
so,
listen, it was not an easy decision.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got a longtime guy who has done so much for the program. But it was going to happen. Whether he left on his own volition or whether it came down to this at the end of the season, maybe they would have saved a couple bucks by waiting until December 1st when the buyout went down, I think, to $48 million. But if we're talking dozens of millions, really, what's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Penn State now, as I said, the biggest job on the board. We can talk through some names in a few minutes if we want to, but
definitely.
I do think that it was probably the right decision. If money is not a factor and we can all roll our eyes at the buyouts, there are a bunch of big ones out there. My hunch is that this is not the only big buyout we're going to be talking about this coaching carousel cycle.
No.
But for Pat Kraft to sort of throw that to the side and say, you know what, this isn't working. We're going to lose the fan base. We may have already lost the locker room. This is going to happen eventually. Let's do it immediately. I do give him credit for that.
What is your understanding of some sort of vague bar that should be hit when Penn State has the right guy, is recruiting on the level that Penn Staters seem to think they should be, which I think is reasonable, are playing in the Big Ten, in the NIL and portal era, in a sort of everything is national era.
Right.
Like, if I were to sit here and tell you like they should be in the playoff 3 out of every 5 years, that's not unreasonable. Something like that?
I think so. I mean, look, I think the broader point is that Penn State is spending hundreds of millions of dollars.
Correct.
As an athletic department to try and get itself at the top, if not near the top, of all of college football. It sees itself as a national contender year in and year out. And of course, that includes getting to the playoff, like you said, 3 of 5, whatever it is. You're not going to get every year. But
no. But like, tell me what you think is a reasonable measuring stick for this new coach. Beating Ohio State 1 out of every 3 years?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Penn State fashions itself as a team that should not go into those games with almost a defeatist attitude, which is the way it has been, at least from afar, these last couple of years. There has definitely been this narrative out there. You can go and read Penn State message boards. You can go on any social media platform. You can talk to Penn State fans the way we used to back in the day, right? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
the overwhelming sentiment among the fan base going into some of these big games is, yeah, but this is
Sure.
James Franklin. We've made the joke on this show about big game James.
Yeah.
Whether it's mismanaging the clock late in the game, whether it's just going into these games and feeling like there's a next gear that they never hit, playing overly conservative, never developing an offense with some of, incredible talent that they've had come through the door.
Right.
It is getting over that proverbial hump now of getting to the point where going into that game, you feel like there's a fighting chance. You feel like you are on level footing with some of these other programs. And let's be real. How many programs really are there in the Big Ten that rise to that level? Ohio State for sure.
Right.
I think Oregon is definitely there.
Yep.
Michigan is probably pretty close to there. They just won a title a couple years ago.
Yep.
But outside of that, Penn State sees itself as being in part of that lead pack. And I think given what we've seen happen now over the last couple of weeks, clearly they don't feel like they're there. They feel like they've regressed. You can watch the games. It looks like they've regressed. And so I understand why they would decide to make this move. There's really no excuse for losing to UCLA and Northwestern, given the talent that they had on this roster. And furthermore, there's no excuse to feel like there is actual regression that took place this year. The injury to Aller aside, this team felt like it got a lot worse, frankly, than it was a year ago. And I don't know if I can fully explain that.
Yeah. No, it has to be a, behind the scenes lighting a fire or lack thereof under players, having a vision for coaches about how to maintain the season and a high level, because look, the standard is the standard in the modern era because of James Franklin. When everything happened about 15 years ago or so, things were down bad, and understandably so. And that James Franklin was able to bring them back to national prominence, even though Penn State was obviously consistently falling short of regional quote unquote rivals. Ohio State's not a rival, but it's a measuring stick program. That we are at this point as college football humans because of James Franklin. And so now you're saying, okay, who is that but 17 to 28% better in those big games that can maintain terrific recruiting in the Midwest and Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions, and, find assistant coaches consistently who are developing NFL talent at all sorts of positions, including receiver. Yes, receiver, and, KJ Hamler and Parker Washington, all guys like that. And so that is going to be the however many dozens of millions of dollar question that we are now faced with as college football humans. There are obvious names. There are going to be less than obvious names. Penn State is, I think if Penn State is run correctly and Pat Kraft is running this athletic department correctly, he will look at Penn Staters, guys who have been within or near the program or regionally affiliated with Pennsylvania. And he will look at outsiders as well and find the best possible person to be 17 to 29% better than James Franklin, while also bringing the good of the James Franklin era. Who are those names?
So I have been saying on this show for at least 5 years that Matt Rule is going to be the next coach at Penn State.
Right.
This is long before it was even a possibility that James Franklin would be fired. Matt Rule is from State College. He played at State College High. He was a linebacker. He walked on to the Penn State football team. He played for Joe Paterno back in the day.
Yes.
This is seen as one of their own. Furthermore, he used to work for Pat Kraft. He's very good friends with Pat Kraft. There is a lot of connective tissue, I think, that would point to Matt Rule. Penn State fans may not want to hear that, but I think there is a lot of smoke on Matt Rule. Okay. So I would personally be stunned if it's not Matt Rule.
Okay.
I have been in that camp for a while. I'm not saying it's the best decision, but I think that will ultimately end up being the move. Outside of Matt Rule, some other names that I will posit, not necessarily ones that I have read.
Okay.
I think Fran Brown is interesting at Syracuse.
A lot of energy, younger guy, recruiting, I think he has a 5-star receiver committed at the moment from South Florida. Continue.
Was, I believe, at Temple during the Rule era when Temple was, or when Rule was at Temple. So there's perhaps a little bit of connective tissue there.
From New Jersey, defensive background. Yep.
Right. I would be surprised if they went Fran Brown over Matt Rule, but alas, and also doesn't seem like Fran Brown wants to leave. Money
Sure.
talks. Penn State's a bigger job, but that's the guy that I am most excited about. I have not seen that reported anywhere. This is just me speculating. Another name that I have seen kicked around a little bit, not so much this year, but in previous iterations of this kind of hypothetical conversation around James Franklin, Danton Lynn, defensive coordinator right now at USC. A lot of Penn State ties there.
Played at Penn State, yes?
Played at Penn State, sure.
Yeah.
Obviously is going to be a name that people are interested in, given the job that he has done at UCLA and most recently at USC, seen as very much an up-and-comer in the coaching world. I could see him maybe getting a look, getting a phone call. I've seen a couple other names reported. There are a lot of them that I'm not buying. Okay. I've seen a couple I can read off a few. Curt Cignetti, I think, is going to be a popular name. Curt Cignetti, I believe, is from Western Pennsylvania.
From the Pittsburgh area, played at West Virginia, I think he coached at, before Indiana, and James Madison coached at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Correct?
IUPUI, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not IUPUI, but
yes,
Indiana
IUP.
University, IUP. Obviously, Frank Cignetti is going to be on a lot of radars, given what he's done at Indiana. I don't know what the appetite is for him to leave Bloomington anytime soon. He's clearly got a good thing going and proving that he can win there pretty quickly. But I understand the appeal. Curt Cignetti, not the youngest option, to be honest with you. He's 64 years old at present, but clearly very good at what he's doing. So it shouldn't matter, but if you're going to be giving somebody a ton of money, this is something that you need to consider. Sure. I've also seen Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell's interesting. Okay, Matt Campbell comes up with these jobs every year because he's at Iowa State, because he's done a good job, because there's a very strong argument that Matt Campbell has never had the resources that he would get if he went somewhere bigger. You know, could he win if he had more resources? I don't know. This is a hypothetical.
Yep.
I would probably be a bit underwhelmed if they went in that direction. But alas, Matt Campbell is one of these names that I think is probably going to be mentioned alongside this job as well. Some of the other ones that I have seen reported that I do not buy at all.
Okay.
I do not buy Clark Lee at Vanderbilt.
From Nashville, played at Vanderbilt, coaching at Vanderbilt.
Clark Lee is not leaving Vanderbilt unless it's for a different job. Okay. It's something that keeps him in that area. I would be very surprised.
Well, he could also be fired by Vanderbilt and need a job at some point, but
but
it's not happening this year. Yeah.
It's not happening this year. They're a top 20 team. I've seen Eli Drinkwitz at Mizzou. That speaks to me as agent speak. Okay. I think Eli Drinkwitz is going to have his name in a bunch of different conversations this year because it's going to be a very active coaching cycle. He's done a very good job at Mizzou. My hunch is that there are going to be a bunch of SEC schools that are sniffing around him as well.
Arkansas,
I'm not buying
possibly
that.
Florida. Sure.
I'm not buying that at all.
Yeah.
Those are some of the big names that I have heard. I have seen a couple other ones that have come through in the chat. A lot of coordinators, right? I've seen
Brian Hartline.
Brian Hartline. I don't buy Brian Hartline at all as a head coaching opportunity here for Penn State. Manny Diaz is another name that I know has been kicked around given his ties recently to Penn State, which is interesting to me, right? But I think ultimately this is Rule's job to lose if he wants it. He's going to be the first call. If Matt Rule decides he wants it, he's going to be the guy.
There are a number of, and maybe it's not specific to Penn State. We're doing a Penn State emergency podcast there, but like people with Northeastern ties that are either at really big jobs. You know, the timing isn't great for a guy like Mike Elko, who has a ton of experience in the area. He's at Texas A&M. They're a top 5. You're not leaving Texas A&M at this point. Manny Diaz, obviously not a Penn Stater, but has coached at Penn State recently and has Duke on a really nice upswing at the moment. Good recruiter, younger guy. But it would be like his third head coaching gig in like 5 years or something, right? So that's a tough pull, especially as he has Duke in a good place, maybe similar to Fran Brown, although Fran Brown doesn't have the Penn State specific connection. You mentioned Curt Cignetti. Why leave? I know Penn State's a bigger place that's more prestige, but why leave a place that you're about to likely go undefeated and compete for the Big Ten already in a better place than Penn State is? I understand the ceiling at Penn State is hypothetically higher because of the prestige, but I don't know in the portal era if you've got a great thing going.
Well, this is what you see happen this time of year. Okay,
this is what
happens because there are fans out there, rightfully looking around the college football landscape.
Yeah.
And they say, I'd love to get Curt Cignetti.
Yeah.
I'd love to get Kirby Smart. I'd love to get Nick Saban out of retirement. This is a two-way street.
Yes.
Okay. It needs to work on both sides of the equation. And I don't know if it works for Kurt Cignetti. I like what he's built so far at Indiana. Clearly, what he did yesterday with Indiana is pretty damn impressive. Indiana is going to be a top 3 team, a top 5 team at worst.
Yeah.
Before long.
Why start over?
Yeah, why start over? Why put yourself in that situation, even if you've got more resources? I get it from the fans' perspective. I don't get it from his.
Well, the more he succeeds at Indiana, the more resources he will continue to amass.
That's right. And Indiana is not a small place.
School. It's not a small place school. In a small conference.
It's a huge school in a big conference with a lot of success in the athletic world. It just hasn't been a preeminent name in football. And he is trying to get them there. He's doing a really good job of it. And they've got a really good team. So I don't know what the impetus would be for him to leave. It's certainly not a money thing with this guy.
Right.
I mean, I just think he's kind of a lunatic and he wants to win now. He's proven that he can do that. I understand the appeal, but again, I'd be stunned if it weren't Rule. Rule is the first call. I'd be stunned if it's not Matt Rule.
Do you know how many seasons James Franklin, I'm putting you on the spot. There's no way you'll have the exact number, but you can guess. How many seasons since James Franklin has started his head coaching career at Vanderbilt that he has led a team to a top 25 poll finish? It's 2011, I want to say.
2011?
So it's 15 or 14 full seasons, whatever my math is, somewhere around
top
there.
25?
Yes.
10.
It's 9. 9 seasons. See how many Matt Rule has in that time? Now he had a very brief detour in the NFL. Matt Rule has finished a season ranked 1 time.
Yeah.
At 1 year at Baylor. I'm not saying Matt Rule is overrated. I think he is a good coach.
Look, here's the problem with Rule. Okay. Yeah. The problem with Rule is that Rule's track record is almost the same as Franklin's.
Right.
Because when you hire Matt Rule, you hire a program builder.
Yes.
Everybody before this season was talking about year 3 Matt Rule at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And thus far, they've been good, right? They're having a good season for sure. But I don't know if that's where Penn State is at right now. I think James Franklin did an admirable job building up that program. The focus now needs to be on player development. You could definitely make an argument that Matt Rule is better as a player developer than James Franklin. But I think it has been in shorter spurts.
He hasn't been anywhere long enough to recruit somebody, develop them, see them off to the NFL. He hasn't had that.
At different schools. And it has been, I think, much more limited. It has not been the rising tide that lifts all boats. They've gotten better on defense everywhere he's been.
Sure.
But case in point, look at what's going on.
Not the issue at Penn State.
Not the issue at Penn State. Case in point, look at what's going on at Nebraska this year, right? We were led to believe that offensive line was going to be better. It was no longer going to be a weakness. It's still kind of a weakness.
Yeah.
Right. So though we've seen some improvement wherever Rule has been, and clearly the programs have gotten better over a 3-year stretch pretty much everywhere. He's got that track record. Not a bad coach, but I just feel like if you are hiring for Penn State at this juncture, you want somebody who is more of a proven talent developer, somebody who can step in and make the most of what amounts to incredible resources to make the program as good as you want it to be.
Can I pull another name out of my ass? Unless you have more Matt Rule thoughts. I do apologize for interrupting. We can go back. There is a Penn Stater who was like a Broyles, I think, finalist last season with a ton of college experience.
Right.
Who is still very much active, is very much a prestigious name. I'm throwing names at the wall.
Yeah.
But you do have Al Golden. I'm just saying, right? If I just told you an elite coordinator from Notre Dame last season has extensive ties to Penn State, I know it's not going to happen. I'm just saying there's an interesting grouping of people who you should talk to if you're Pat Kraft, and not just be like, not make the Matt Rule call and be like, all right, it's Matt Rule. He's never consistently had a good offense. He's finished ranked once, but he loves this place and it's his dream job. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Rule did end up being the hire, there would definitely be some element of the fan base that would embrace him as one of their own. Played at Penn State, is from State College. There's definitely deep roots there that I think the fan base could sink its teeth into. That would certainly appeal to some of the older generations of fans. But to the point, I don't know if the high-level coaching prowess has been on display enough to maybe quell the masses for too long, right? I don't know. I feel a little bit put off by that possibility. I felt better about it a couple of years ago when I started talking about it. It has quite literally been 5 or 6 years that I've been talking about Matt Rule to Penn State.
Here's the other
it's like the worst kept secret,
of course,
in all of college football.
And I don't know what, like, Matt Rule's kids, how old they are. They, does he want to uproot them once again after what, 3 places in 5 years or something like that? Maybe a little bit more. The other thing is, each major place in this sport, take your pick, 12, 15, 18 schools, whatever. They're their own little kingdoms and fiefdoms. And whoever Penn State hires, the unspoken, sort of indescribable je ne sais quoi, Ty,
Right, sure,
is you have to be able to learn and develop and become fluent in Penn Stateese, right? There's a screw loose in the Penn State community, just like, let's be very clear,
everybody else has a screw loose.
There's a screw loose in the Alabama community, and in the Florida community, and in the Oregon community, and in the Texas community, right? You're going to have to find somebody, whether it's somebody internal, and Penn State has that unique screw, somebody that, yes, no, am I saying something improperly?
No, go ahead.
You're going to have to find somebody who is going to be either reminded of this or explained this and be okay with living in that specific fishbowl. But you're going to have somebody who is going to be able to make peace with themselves and their family and their community, that this is their new life. And again, not unique to Penn State, but anybody who has been to State College or, sort of looked at this program knows there's a unique quality to Penn State athletics that this hire needs to be okay with. Is that unfair?
No, I mean, look, every coaching situation is different. Every coaching situation is unique.
Right.
And Penn State is unique for a whole multitude of reasons. And I think that's part of why there is an appeal here with Rule. Even before Pat Kraft became the AD, that was always sort of a logical next step if the job came open, given his affiliation, given his ties to the area,
totally,
given his seeming love for the area. That's why you're going to hear this name time and again. Since we are doing this live on YouTube, and we won't do it much longer, I don't know if we have much more to say at this point.
By the way, I had totally forgotten the name Danton Lynn.
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty good name. The youth,
I like Danton Lynn.
The familiarity, the fluency. Does he want to speak Penn Stateese once again? I don't know.
I like Danton Lynn. I've always liked Danton Lynn, and I thought that was a brilliant hire when USC brought him over.
I like that he has been at big places as an assistant. You can look Kurt Signetti, not big places, but exclusively one. And there are those guys. There are those smaller school guys that have won huge. Kalen DeBoer has ascended to that level. Washington, Alabama. Who did Temple just hire? Casey Keeler, right? Who has won national championships, and he's also, I think, in his 60s though. But he's local to he's local to. Is he a Philly guy or he's somewhere in the Northeast?
Yeah.
There are those guys. Bob Chesney is from Central PA, young and doing good things at James Madison, the incubator of Kurt Signetti, right? You could go that direction. It's a big jump, though. That's a big jump from James Madison to Penn State.
So here's what I'm going to say.
But we're not lacking for squint and talk yourself into sensible options.
No, not at all. So here's what we're going to do since we're doing this live on YouTube.
Yes.
I know there's been a lot of activity in the chat here. I want to flash up a couple comments. We can take a couple questions. We can leave people to enjoy the rest of their Sunday. While we're waiting for some of those to queue up, though, the other thing that I would point out now, we expected that this would be a very active coaching carousel this year. It wasn't active at all a year ago, but we have been, I think, teeing this up now for many weeks on end, that it was going to get here before long, right? We knew that this was coming, and it is slowly starting to build. I think this pushes the boulder a little bit more downhill, and I am curious to see what the knock-on effect is from this. Right?
Sure.
I am curious to see if there are other programs around college football that decide they don't want to sit this one out. They don't want to be on the sidelines. If Penn State's already sniffing around, they want to make sure that they're in the game as well. There are a bunch of other coaching possibilities out there that I think could be open at some point before long. What happens at Florida? What happens at Auburn? What happens at Florida State? What happens at Wisconsin? I could probably name 3 or 4 others, Dan. But it is moves like this that tend to set off a bit of a chain reaction. And so don't be surprised if we're sitting here a week from now and there's another one. And then 2 weeks after that, there are a few more. This is going to be, I think, the new normal for the remainder of the season because people want to get in the game now a little bit early. That is why you hear names like Eli Drinkwitz coming up.
Of course.
Because I think he's going to be one of the guys that is much sought after, particularly in SEC circles. Just kind of keep your head on a swivel because this is not the only one that we're going to hear.
Shane Beamer.
Beamer.
I don't hate Shane Beamer. Can recruit. Penn State's going to have a lot of assets at his disposal. I don't know. There's a lot of names that would be very enchanted to be in a conversation with Penn State. I mean, is Kevin Cahill going to be able to get out of his garage without being stormed by reporters in the beautiful Lehigh Valley as he has Lehigh dominant in the Patriot League?
Yeah. I mean, he is another guy that is probably not going to get the Penn State job. But
he's on an upswing, though, of course.
But he's going to get an FBS job before long. He's actually done a really good job.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to pick up a few comments here.
Please.
I'm going to put them on the screen. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have ideas for who Penn State should go after next, we're all ears. We will put them up on the screen.
Is there anybody internal, by the way? That's the one thing we didn't talk about. Who is There's the associate head coach, DB's coach, who I think is he's a Penn Stater,
Anthony
right?
Poindexter, right, is a name that I brought up before.
Troy something? Tony something? Who's the DB's coach? Is it Harris?
Well, the interim coach is going to be Terry Smith, who's the cornerback.
Terry Smith. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'm just, they're going to hopefully.
I think this is going to be a cleaning house situation, and they're going to go outside of the current coaching staff and try to reboot from scratch is my assumption. Brandon has been watching. Thank you, Brandon. Brandon's mentioned a couple times now that Penn State's not going to get Matt Rule. We will see.
Yeah,
we will see. There is a reason, though. I will tell you that I have been talking about this for 6 years because
Jedediah Fish, by the way,
disagree. But alas,
by the way, Matt Rule knows what to look for in a good moving company. Let's just say that.
Addie says, genuinely curious to know why not Brian Hartline for the job. Offensive minded, can recruit well, and is young. He's everything Frank wanted to be at Penn State. This is Brian Hartline's, I guess, second stint as play calling adjacent at Ohio State. I would need to see more of a body of work.
Okay.
But he has been very good in his role.
There were reports of a Cincinnati interview when Luke Fickell left for Wisconsin. So I don't know look, when you're a major coordinator like Brian Hartline is, major, you're going to get that interest, but he's got to want it.
Chris says, do you call Urban Meyer? No, you do
not.
You do not call Urban Meyer.
No.
I don't think so. All right, who else do we got here? We got some folks saying that Signetti's already denied interest. Yep. Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And I wouldn't blame him, to be honest with you. Chris says Tulane's coach, John Sumrall. John Sumrall is going to be very active. You're going to hear his name a lot with respect to SEC openings.
I think it's
that part of the country. I don't think he's going to go up to Penn State.
Right.
But John Sumrall is probably not long for Tulane because he is highly regarded as an up-and-comer.
Yep.
All right. What else do we got here? Manny Diaz and Al Golden co-head coach situation. There we go. One on offense, one running defense, the other handling the juggling. Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
Here, hold on. Jed Fish is going to go to either UCLA or Florida. That's my prediction.
Or James Franklin's going to go to UCLA.
Or James Franklin should go to Stanford.
Stanford, UCLA, sure. Get some sun.
Somebody says Matt Campbell. I don't know. That just doesn't do it for me.
I mean, you'll see that Lance Leipold obviously has coached in the Northeast and Midwest a good amount and has done a terrific job with Kansas. Kenny Dillingham's not leaving ASU for Penn State.
I have seen this mentioned in a couple places.
Yeah.
And I have had a hard time trying to understand whether it's serious or if it's a wish list. If it's a wish list, I get it.
Sure.
Because I think there are a lot of places that would want Kenny Dillingham. Kenny Dillingham is never going to leave Arizona State. You're going to have to drag his dead body out of Tempe. He loves that place. He is not leaving that place. So I get the appeal for sure. I'd love Kenny Dillingham. He is not leaving ASU. So I would say throw that one out.
By the way, one path to this whole story, one string to pull on is Penn State coming heavy. Oh, hold on. Phrasing here. Penn State approaching and aggressively pursuing Matt Rule. Matt Rule really feeling the pull of Penn State, but Nebraska coming in with a crazy offer to keep Matt Rule. Like, okay, we're going to pay Matt Rule $13.5 million a year. Okay. Nebraska will be crazy aggressive to keep Matt Rule. And he is a pinstripe bowl coach for Nebraska that they're paying $13.5 million and they get absolutely Norvelled. Right?
Yeah.
That it is like the best possible leverage play. And at that point, if Matt Rule's agent goes to Nebraska and says he'll stay for $13.5 million, Nebraska has to say, you know what? Good luck in State College.
He's already getting paid a lot. He's already.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, do you pay Matt Rule a cartoonish amount of money if you're Troy Dannon at Nebraska to keep him away from Penn State based on promises and potential? I say no.
People can stop mentioning Brian Kelly in the chat. Okay. I don't want, please no. Don't put me through this again.
That's not nice.
Forever Orange Girl saying you can't have Fran Brown, but would you be interested in Dino Babers? That's funny.
Heard he's a nice guy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mark Stoops is a good idea. I do not think Mark Stoops is a good idea. I don't hate Jesse Minter, but I don't think Jesse Minter is going to go back to the college ranks. I think Jesse Minter is going to stay in the NFL.
Yep, likely. But I'd like that line of thinking.
Yeah.
I like the line of thinking where it's somebody young, somebody energetic, somebody who has a definitive strength in how they coach, what they coach, and, is willing to be aggressive in this era.
So here is what I would say just in closing, okay?
Okay, please.
I tend to agree with your logic. I hope this isn't a very limited search that is focused on one person. And that, I think, is my biggest fear with this hire. Because, again, I have been saying this name for 5 or 6 years. So I would like to see them widen the aperture a little bit. I would like to see them talk to a bunch of people. I am hoping that it is not just them having their heart set on this guy that is good friends with the AD, who has ties to the area, who has ties to the program. Matt Rule's a fine coach in his own right. I'm not, disparaging him, but I hope that they take this opportunity to really take the temperature of college football, see where things are headed, and, take big swings.
Man.
But I don't know.
Dude.
I don't know. I didn't expect that we would get this today. I thought we would get it eventually, but Pat Kraft obviously decided that he's going to rip the Band-Aid off. He's going to make it happen. I would encourage people watching this after the fact to drop comments and let us know who you think Penn State should go after and why. There really are no wrong answers. We're just speculating up here as well as anybody else at this point.
It's whoever Terry Pagula wants.
It's probably. And the super yacht. Yeah. Whoever he can get on the yacht and wine and dine.
Yeah. I totally agree. It will be fascinating to watch. And I can't help but think the buyouts as a result of this search in the next 6 to 7 years are going to be crippling. Right? Whether it's Matt Rule somewhere, whether it's somebody else somewhere, whether it's Penn State feeling like they've made an enormous mistake, it's going to be like the odds of Penn State nailing this hire and everybody being thrilled because it's a major place and it's just extremely tough to nail a hire now seem low. And, this is agent season, baby.
It's agent season. I think you're going to hear a lot of names with Penn State connections. I think it's going to get real interesting in a hurry. And I hope Pat Kraft has a decent buyout kind of set aside in his contract as well, because this is one that they've got to hit on, right? You don't make a move like this, you're kind of playing without a net at this point in time if you're going to shell out $50 some odd million. And more to come on this one, more to come on many other ones that I think will follow in relatively short order. So,
by the way, my closing message is
please.
James Franklin, come through the Chicago burbs for some pizza. Let's talk. I want to hear some stories. That's it.
On that note, thank you to one and all for tuning in here. A bit of a live emergency podcast on the news that James Franklin's been fired
Yes.
from Penn State University. Much more to come on this front. Again, it will be a very active cycle. We'll do our best here to keep you as up to date as we can. Make sure you hit follow. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you leave comments for where you think Penn State goes next. In the meantime, though, for that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and as always, stay solid.
Peace.